I see them on Instagram. I don't even like them because I hate looking at it.
I love you too.
Hello and welcome to the Health Oddity Podcast, episode 206. And if you are listening on the day of release, it will be the 9th of August. And I know many of you do because many of you kind of message us and comment on things as soon as the podcast comes out. And if you are listening on the day of release, both Pete and I are on holiday.
And not together.
Not together. Yeah.
We're not sharing a bed again.
Well, I had Gary, didn't I? Gary Clark was with me at the weekend for the Magnus seminar, and we were talking obviously about September for the Brunel, the Britain's Disabled Strongman and Strongwoman, and he said, "Oh, I sorted out the hotels," and I said, "Oh, well, me and Pete sharing a room again," and he goes, "Well, if you want to." I was
It's tradition. It's tradition. We've got to do it now.
Yeah. So we've got that set. So that'd be great. So yes, it is episode 206. We are joined by a fantastic returning guest today, who I'll kind of introduce in a second. Just quickly check in with Mr. Peter Land. We actually didn't coordinate our t-shirts, but we're both wearing yellow Health Oddity t-shirts today, aren't we? Which is very cool. But how are you doing, Pete? You okay?
I'm doing very well. I've got a bit of a problem though, because we inexplicably had the locks changed yesterday upstairs on the main building. So I've got to put a new key on my key fob, and I cut my nails yesterday. I didn't know the locks were going to get changed.
You can't open the little key ring.
It's always that day, isn't it? I'm like, oh, for God's sake! It's like when you eat pistachios as well. That's always like whenever I've cut my nails, it's a nightmare. But there you go.
Okay, there you go. That's how Pete is doing.
That's a little insight into the troubles I have in my life.
And when you said, it took me a second, when you said we've had the locks changed on the main door upstairs, that's because you are actually underground, aren't you?
Yeah, I live in it's like a 5-story house, but it's like split into 5 flats. So we've got,
not like you're a Womble or something then.
Sorry?
Not like you're a Womble or something then.
No.
Underground, overground, wombling free.
Yeah.
We did actually, because we were in Kensington at the weekend and stayed in an old house. Which is a hotel, now, but one of these big 5-story kind of things. And like you say, it kind of, lovely place in Kensington. But yeah, you're surprised how massive they are when you go inside them. Because
oh man, this place is huge. It's ridiculous. Like thinking about they've got some of them still that go in Bath for like that are full houses.
Mm.
But you need a lot of money to live in one of those.
Yeah,
because we're getting the back renovated as well, which you have to do, obviously, because it's a house and you have to look after it and all that. But it's an eye-watering amount of money that it costs to get it done. And fortunately, it's split between 5 flats, so that's okay.
Okay. Anyway, we are joined today by Mr. Ben Morris from, I think, Bristol is the base. Is that correct, Ben?
It is, yeah.
Bristol is the base. Brilliant. And just quickly before we crack on with Ben, I will say we have had Ben on before, but if you are newer to listening, it was 2.5 years ago. It was way back on episode 80 on an episode that was entitled Less is More. And we kind of talked about kind of mental health, overwhelm, lots of things like that on the last podcast. I'd really recommend you go back and listen to that. We're going to be talking about some different stuff today. But Ben is on his Instagram, which we will give a plug to at the start and the end. He's on Instagram as at Yay Burpees. We might talk about burpees today. And he's down as a coffee junkie, a sports dabbler, and strangely attracted to trying to lift heavy things. So if you haven't listened to the first episode 80, you're more than welcome to go back and listen to that and then come to this, or listen to this and go back to listen to that. But just want to let you know, because after this one, if you want more of Ben, we have a whole other episode.
And who doesn't want more Ben?
Who doesn't want more Ben? We have a whole other episode with Ben. So Ben, it's been 2.5 years since we last spoke to you. How are you doing? How are things going? And what are we gonna kind of be talking about today?
Yeah, thanks, James. It's good to be back. I was saying before we came online, it's really strange for me to actually see you and Pete. I tune in every Friday on my cycle to work, But you're in my head. I don't get to watch. I don't watch it on YouTube, so it's a strange one to actually see you. Obviously, we've crossed paths again at a couple of comps and things along the way, but it's nice to actually be in a virtual room with you guys again.
Excellent. Well, it's lovely to see you again. And I'm glad that you're one of the people, because every week I say many of you listen on the day of release, and it's good to actually hear you listen on the day of release on a Friday morning, which is great. Yeah. So what's going on, Ben?
It's been good couple of years training wise. I think last time we spoke, I was 6 months into my kettlebell sport journey, which seems like a long time ago. Since then, I've been to 2 world championships. Took a bronze medal in pentathlon, the first one, which was unbelievable. Work's been going well as well. Hence the cycle. I've moved to Bath for work. So I've occasionally run into Pete when I've been wandering the streets, when I occasionally get out of the office. And that's been good. Gives me some time to. That photo is actually the river in Bath.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, that's down by Bureau Hatfield and what have you, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
Last time I was pandering to you with Hexham. This time it's Bath. I'll try and get something a bit more Essex focused next time, James.
So how far is that cycled from Bristol to Bath that you do? Do you do that every day, or is that just once a week you go into the office, or what's
3 or 4 times a week. It's about 12.5 miles each way, the way I go. So yeah, it's first week was because I'm not, I did the classic bloke thing. I did it, approached it logically, and went, okay, so I could walk 10 minutes to the bus stop. The bus will take me anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on traffic, and 10 minutes the other end. 45 minutes into town to get the train back the other way, 15 minutes, 10 minutes the other end. Cycling's probably, even if I take it nice and easy, an hour and a quarter tops. It'll do me the world of good. Obviously, completely ignored the fact I'd done about 10 miles in total in 10 years. But I'm not an idiot. So I tested the run. I did the there and back. I went, yeah, I can do this. And first day, yeah, full of excitement, full of beans. Did that, and that was fine. Second day was a bit, it's a little bit tender. And by the end of that first week, I was walking like John Wayne, going, oh, I'm really questioning my life choices at this stage. But like we might get into this. Yeah, loads of guests you've talked to and people you work with, you adapt, you get used to it. But you've got to get used to that accumulation as well as the one-off bit, that accumulating the fatigue along the way. But it's been good. It's been good for the heart, been good for the lungs. Get some activity in there.
It's funny you say that, because there's a guy who I train, a guy called Mark, who's like 62, I think. He's just retired, and he used to row back in the day. But then when he came along to me, he couldn't stand on one leg, right? So we got him a bit stronger. We got him to stand on one leg and all that sort of stuff. He could, well, he'd wobble around, put it that way. His balance wasn't great, and he's also much stronger on one side than the other because he's been rowing and what have you. So we've been working together for like nearly 2 years, actually. And he's got way stronger and he can't stand on one leg and all that sort of stuff. But then he had a golf lesson, right? He hasn't played golf for 30 years. And he had to miss a session. He texted me. He was like, "Oh," he goes, "my back's really tight and sore," and like he hadn't like hurt his back. It was just sore from just swinging a golf club, right? And I was like, "Yeah, maybe he's it's a dangerous sport, that playing golf." But like you say, it's the specific. I mean, you do kettlebell sport. I know you've been injured, and we'll talk about that. But you do kettlebell sport, so you think cycling would be dead easy, wouldn't it? But then it's like your heart and lungs can handle it, but then it's a completely different like a bit of a completely different way of moving, isn't it? I suppose.
Yeah, it's a completely different way of moving, and it's a bit longer, and you've got a day's work in between either side as well, and you've figuring fuel and stuff. But also, most of my sport before, where I've dabbled in stuff, has all been quite short interval with recovery in between. So like when Finn's giving me interval sessions, minute on, minute off is absolutely my bag. I can smash that pretty much all day, because it's just I'm conditioned to that kind of work and recover. The longer sets, and Lauren knew James, friend of the show, in James's gym, and some of the others doing the marathon stuff, and Ollie, you just go, I can't get my head around that as a concept. That's it's just really not my bag.
It's interesting because a couple of episodes ago we talked, didn't we, Pete, about the walking weekend that I did recently, and how much it sort of smashed me, for days. And that's just going for a walk but it was 5-6 hours, but I'm just not used. You think, well, it's just a walk, but then for 2-3 days afterwards, my legs were aching in parts that don't normally ache, and just the whole body was fatigued. And it's just like you say, just something totally different out of your kind of regular training. It makes such a difference. But we're all going to be training very hard for next year when we come and see Pete, because we got walking in Bath and up Salisbury Hill and all the rest of it. So I'll make sure I'm more conditioned for the next one.
It's funny saying that, because I don't really run very often, so I can't remember the last time I ran, how long ago it was. But that tightens up my Achilles like you wouldn't believe. But I walk with barefoot shoes on. I'll go out and walk 5-6 hours in barefoot, in just a pair of Vivos, even the shoes, not the boots. And sometimes I even go out in barefoot when I'm on grass and stuff like that. And I can walk forever. But as soon as I go out running, it doesn't matter like what I'm in, my Achilles tighten up.
I mean, we're amazing. We're amazing, though, aren't we? As humans, we're so adaptive and so geared up to efficiency in that stuff. So as we adapt to it, it takes less effort, because that's what we're all about. Which is when we get to that change of pace, whether it's effort or whether it's change of domain, it goes, oh, we're waking the system up.
Yeah. Excellent. So in terms of you now, you mentioned that when we spoke to you last, you were kind of 6 months into your kettlebell sport journey. I still see you doing a lot of kettlebell sport type lifts and movements and things with training, but kind of what's happened over time? I know you have had some injuries and things, and yeah, what's kind of going on with you as we speak now?
Yeah, kind of not exactly. I feel a bit like Darren Anderson in some respects. To sort of do a bit, achieve a bit, and then get another sick note. And as we go, it's been really good. The community's fantastic. I couldn't. In a lot of ways, it's scratching what I've been looking for since I stopped playing rugby, and I've dabbled in some bits and pieces. But this sort of hits all the markers, and the community around it is massive. Is a massive part of that. Competitions up in with Dell, with Ollie, going up to Wolfpack, getting to qualify for England and go to World Championships is pretty special. So I went to Belgium in 2022 November, and came third in my category, vets, chunky vets category, which was awesome. And then I thought, we'll have a dabble with the World Games, so the 40 kilo 10-minute sets. And I wasn't ready I had a go at that in March of 2023, which was early in that adventure. It was all right, but still learning. Then went to England in September 23, and I took silver there, which was great. And then I got COVID 2 weeks before the Worlds in 2023, and that was gutting. So some of what I want to talk about, hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about today, is dealing with setbacks and stuff. And then coming off that, sort of, went into a hard winter's training to go, right, let's go for the World Games again in March. Was absolutely flying, lifting heavy, lifting off them, feeling really good, really solid. And then just about a week out before the English Opens in March, I tore my bicep in the warm up, just pulling the kettlebell up, audible crack on the video, bicep went. And it's been, pretty much since then has been dealing with injury, dealing with the mental side of that, the physical side of that, the social side as well, and we'll talk a bit about that. But getting back into pentathlon and hoping to recover and see what I can do in September.
Let's get into that then, because that's like one of the reasons you want to come on, wasn't it? Because it was like, there's the thing of like, you can be flying and you don't even necessarily have to injure yourself. You can just all of a sudden think everything feels heavier. I mean, I've had that recently, and everything felt heavier and I was just tired. And then that's when I was like, right. And I spoke to Paul about it. It was like it was kind of like, we'll step back a little bit and then we'll move forwards again. Because, the risk of injury goes up then, doesn't it? But some people try and push through it. You obviously weren't doing that. And this is just kind of, it's one of those things that just happens when you're involved in this stuff, because I used to look at it when I was flabby and out of shape, and I'd go, why do people want to get in shape? Because you just get injured. And it's like, no, I was like, they're obviously rubbish at this because they just get injured. It's like, no, it's because they're doing it. That's why. There's always a bit of risk there. So how? I mean, obviously you've had to deal with the stepping back and not lifting as heavy, and we saw you doing the rehab online and all that sort of stuff. But you were talking about the mental side of it as well, because this is the thing, and it's not just this one off. You've had in a lot of your competitions, and I hope you don't mind me saying, but there've been setbacks in like pretty much everyone I've heard you go to. And this is your entire career in kettlebell sport has just been like, not this time, not this time. And not because of bad preparation or anything like that, just one-off things that you can't really control. So how do you keep your head in the game?
I think it's chance to try and be Dan John on this. The Princess Bride quote on that is "Get used to disappointment." You know, whether we like it or not, you know, this disappointment's going to come along the way in life, and sport is no different in that respect. There's always going to be some stuff that gets in the way. Stuff comes up, and if you're doing sport as another strand of your life, it's not your job. You've got lots of competing demands on your attention, on your energy, on your rest and recovery. So there's loads of different elements in that come to bear. So you might have the perfect session planned, and you've got you've got your nutrition squared away, and then something comes up. You know, your dog might be ill, or your kids might need picking up from school at the time you're going to hit a session, or you've got a meeting at work, or whatever it might be that just throws that out. And I think there's a bit of how do we build the flexibility into that, so we keep an eye on what's important, but recognizing that road bumps are going to come along, and then dealing with those when we hit them. And you know, that feels a fairly pointed comment, because cycling, you know, I tore the bicep trying to keep doing the cycle, even controlling the bike hurt, and hitting potholes in the road tries to throw the bike off, and you've got to control that. And that's so if you, with apologies to any listeners who live somewhere between here and Bath, who might have heard a random cyclist swearing when they've hit a pothole on the way.
But can we not mention potholes, please, because that is a very, very, very hot topic in the political area around here and most of the country.
Should we go tree roots or
It's potholes and bollards around here, but anyway, we'll not go there.
It's all a load of bollards, isn't it? I think it's giving yourself space for the disappointment as well, because when something matters, it's, you know, you're going to get an emotional reaction to that when you're pursuing something that's important to you. Whatever it is, it's going to feel like you've been body checked. You know, there is going to be that real emotional reaction to, because it mattered, and if it didn't matter, you probably wouldn't be throwing yourself into it. So that's expected. Trying to push down on that isn't helpful, I think. But it's then being flexible enough to allow yourself that. But how do I respond rather than react? Allow for the reaction, but building my response. And some of that is preparation before, and then you need people in your corner as well to help remind you of the stuff you've prepped with before, so you can figure it out.
And when you mentioned the bicep injury that you had, that you said it was just kind of an innocuous thing, you were warming up, it wasn't like you were going for like a kind of like a record or a maximal lift or something like that. And it's often these things that happen, isn't it? They're not, they kind of, like you say, they blindside us and they kind of catch us off guard, because very rarely, if you're trying to do something exceptionally challenging for you, you kind of really mentally and physically prepare for it, and you kind of, you very often, it's just one of these little things that something almost stupid happens, and we create and we get injured. So when you had this bicep tear, I mean, did you actually kind of do anything that would require, did you have to have surgery? Did you have to have anything done from there, or was it just kind of slowly rebuilding through physiotherapy and just through exercises and things like that?
It was slowly rebuilding through physio. Physio sent me to the hospital to get an X-ray. The hospital said, "Nah, you don't need to worry about that." And physio was, "Oh, okay, but let's see how we go." And touch wood, it's the exercises have helped. There was a bit needed a bit of manipulation as well, because the fluid wasn't quite draining out of the elbow as much as it would as you'd like. So, and probably because of spending all day in that T-Rex 90 position bit at a keyboard as well. So making sure there's enough movement to get the fluid out. But you know, there's the typing hurt, holding a drink with my left hand hurt, washing my beard hurt. You know, this is my kind of resting position. That was uncomfortable. So it got into everything. And the exercises was a real, that was a real moment of, there were moments of despair in that as well. So, you know, I'm curling a 2 kilo dumbbell, and I'm gritting my teeth to do it, to go through the movement, and that's okay. It's connecting with the pain, to associate with it, to listen to the cue, because that's important. But going, compared to the 44 that did it, or the 48 that I was lifting in training before, miles apart from what I should be able to do, and what I could theoretically do. And so there's a real, so you get that kind of switch from, I can cope with this, I can do this, I know what I've got to do, to denial of, oh my God, no, I want to ignore it, into distress before you come back around to coping with it again. But yeah, it was mostly exercise and movement, and building, lots of time just building, getting the clubs back out, doing all the physio exercises, and making sure I did them and didn't become another one of those statistics of people who get the exercises, do it for the first couple of weeks while they're still enthusiastic. A couple of weeks might be a bit generous, but do it for a bit while they've still got some enthusiasm. And you guys will see this from clients as well. It's like full of beans at the beginning, and then the enthusiasm wanes, and you haven't got an organizing principle behind it to keep you going once that enthusiasm goes. So yeah, sticking with that was tricky. But yeah, like a lot of stuff as well. When you face disappointment, you start trying to figure out what that means. You know, what does this mean for what I tried to do, but also what does it mean about who I am now? If this is my, this is just sport, just exercise, but also because it cut across some of the other things that I do as well. So just holding a book to read would also be something I do. That was uncomfortable. So kind of, and then feeling, because there's always setbacks. You go, this is the latest, pushing some of those connections away. So you start to feel a bit more isolated, and then there's that. So you got the injury itself, and then you got the mental bit of that, and then you've got the social bit that goes walkies too, and that's really common for people who experience setbacks, I think, injuries, assaults, that kind of stuff. Disabled people as well see that a lot. But when you then look at some of those, the likes of Mark Tonner and some of the other guests you had, are incredible. You just go, oh yeah, but they're somehow, that's much more meaningful. That's a bigger, it's a bigger thing. And I mean, they're amazing, but that's not me. So you kind of, you discount yourself and your ability, your choice and your part in that. And we do that, sanitize and push ourselves away and disconnect. And so there's loads of different layers in that for all of us, I think.
It's funny when you say that, because like, I'm assuming that's in your head when you go, well, what I'm doing is not as meaningful, but it's like, well, it is though, for you. It doesn't matter about who you're doing it for, the wider world or whatever. It's about you, isn't it? In the end. And people like Mark and stuff like that will be doing it for the greater good, but they'll be doing it for themselves as well. And in fact, I think when he talked about it, he started doing it for himself, didn't he? And then that's the way to do it. Because if you try and do things immediately for everyone else, you give so much of yourself away that it doesn't work out. You've got to do it for yourself first, and then it starts to come out of that. And it's funny that you say, I mean, that whole thing, you're part of the community, like Finn's team and the wider community of the England team, and then the whole world, because you like all of that sort of thing. So there was a guy who I talked to all the time on dog walks. I bumped into him where I bumped into you, actually, on the Kennet and Avon Canal. And I see him all the time, and we just say hello, and we got chatting and stuff. And it turns out he invented walking tennis. He wrote the rule book for walking tennis. There was a lady who decided it was a thing she was going to develop. She got in touch with him because he used to be a tennis coach, and he designed the rules around it, right, like the double bounce and all that sort of stuff. Not that I know much about it, but I looked him up, and it's definitely him. But he said one of the big things was that people who played tennis, who got to a certain age or stopped playing, lost their social connection with the people who still were playing, who still could play, who still had the ability to play. So this kept them doing something that they love, but also being able to stay with the community of people who also do it as well. So even as they get older or less mobile, they've still got a social interaction, and that was the biggest thing. And I think that's the biggest thing with most things.
Yeah, it's a key driver for us. You've got that connection, that feeling part, something bigger is a real, there's evolutionary mechanisms for it as well, but it's a key part of our intrinsic motivation, is that feel of, even for the shy introvert, you still need to feel a connection with something bigger than yourself. And that's, so the community around it, whether it's Walk Bath or whether it's unique results or any endeavor like that, building some community around that is key. And yeah, when we get injured, and seen it in rugby and sports, but when people are ill from work as well, or off maternity or paternity or adoption, you lose some of that connection around what you do, and that makes you then feel very isolated, which then starts you thinking, if you're not careful, can I do this, can I go back? But also, what will people be thinking? And if we're honest, people spend far less time thinking about us than we'd like, which is both really, really distressing and upsetting, but also actually quite a relief when you think about it. And yeah, how do we come back from that? We maintain the connection. If you can maintain that connection around that and do what you can with what you've got, with people who matter to you, you've got the world's your oyster from there, in terms of your sense of self and ability to fully charge your BS deflectors for life at large. And then it becomes less about just the injury is an injury, but it doesn't affect all those other channels of who you are.
This is really interesting. I was just going to say, Pete, so this is really interesting because you mentioned the walking tennis, and we've spoke before about a couple of guys I know who do walking football as they get older. But it's really interesting. It kind of, I suppose, ties into a really big topic, or a really big kind of area, which is getting older, and accepting in some ways that things are going to change as you get older. And we all probably know people who have got the used to, woulda, couldas, that, I used to do this, I used to be able to do this, I could, and living in the past, and then there's got to be some level of acceptance that, yeah, you're not 20 anymore, you're not 30 anymore, things are changing, and it's kind of how we deal with that. And I mean, even for myself, kind of mid to late 40s now, it's not the same as I was when I was in my mid to late 20s, it is hard, I think, for people to move on. And it might be, and that ties into injury, but just even the general, which is going to happen to all of us every single day, is getting older and things changing as we age. So, I mean, have you got any kind of thoughts around that, which is a condition that's going to affect every single person who's listening,
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's odd, isn't it? We think we're the same. We think we're constant. Almost that you've changed is almost one of the worst insults you can throw at someone. And yet, really, we're all changing all the time, from the minute we're born to the minute we exit. But also along the way, whether it's hormone stuff, your environment, your context, but age for sure. I think it's acceptance. Again, you start from a place of accepting that it's not always going to be the way it is, which frees you up, if you want it to. It frees you up to enjoy what you're doing at the moment, and getting more enjoyment out of that enables you to do more around it, but also stops you weaving it into a core part of who you are, so that when it does change, it's then things are changed rather than I've changed, which feels a bit different. But there's also, I mean, you've talked about it before on the show. I'm probably fitter and stronger now at 47 and a bit than I've been at any point in my life, and I've played sport to a decent standard in different game things before, so that's a bit weird, right? And yet But I can't do what I did when I was 19, when I was 24, when I was 30. I've got to approach it differently. So it's how do you make the boat, tuning into what you've got and what you can do and making the most of what you've got rather than fighting about the fact you haven't got the other stuff you've got. I think is the biggie in there, to recognize that actually, as much as I might like to, I might be able to manage 3 days on the bounce training wise. But unless I vary the intensity of that training, I'm not going to do 4. I might be able to push it to 4 or 5, but I will need weeks to recover because I'll have gone deep in the well. And so it's that, how do I punctuate that and be intelligent and smart about it? But that's the difference between training and working out. And I think, when we're exploring a sport and exploring what we can do, we work out a lot because it feels good. The smashing yourself it gives us a bit of a buzz, and there's the adrenaline and the endorphins from that. But there's once you find your thing and you've got an organizing purpose around it, now you can put some structure around that to be almost give yourself permission to not have to go full send every session, to go, actually, this is a tonic session rather than a smash session, or this is, where does this fit into what I'm trying to do down the road?
Here's an interesting thought I've just had while you were talking. And this links in with what Lucy was talking about last week. So we had Lucy Underdown on last week, and she was saying, because you were talking before we started recording about, it's great having like loads of inspirational people on and all that sort of stuff. But what about how do normal people relate? But Lucy's, like we were talking last week, she's a policewoman, full-time policewoman. She works shifts, and she accidentally became one of the strongest women in the world. But she was saying she had to take her training from being 5 or 6 days a week or whatever it was down to 3 because she just couldn't. She could fit it in, but she couldn't recover from it. So what it's just made me think, and you said something interesting. You're fitter and stronger now than you've ever been. And I'm the same. However, I was unfit and weak when I was in my 20s, right? Because I didn't do it. I just drank and smoked and all of that sort of stuff. So I mean, for me, it's like, of course, I'm fitter and stronger now because I got into fitness and health. So I'm going to be, aren't I? So that's not really a benchmark. However, you said you played rugby and all that. You're fitter and stronger now, or you're fitter now, but you couldn't do what you did in your 20s, say. But is that why you weren't fitter and as fit and strong as you are now in your 20s? Because you weren't recovering? Because you don't necessarily need the recovery, but you actually do. You can just get by without it. Do you know what I mean? So there's a bit of a quandary there, I think, because obviously in your 20s, you're going to be like, no, I know best, shut up and all that, because we all do, we all did. But I look at the old time strongmen and they basically just trained the way they did specifically for years and years and years. And it's usually, you hear about it in their 40s was when they were like, all of that starts to accumulate into where they are. Paul McElroy's an example of that as well. He's been doing this stuff for years and he's still getting stronger and he's 42 or 44 or something. So, and he's always been really strong. So it's like, I just find it fascinating that you can get away with it when you're younger. But imagine if you didn't do that and you trained 3 days a week specifically and allowed the recovery, the difference is huge. But I can't think of any examples other than what I've mentioned of people who actually do that.
Yeah, I think it's one of those classic, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah.
Yeah, can I eat this whole cake? Yeah, I can. Should I? Define should. Yeah, when you're, you got that folly of youth as well, haven't you? You kind of think you're invincible. I'm basically an action hero. I'm Deadpool. I'm Wolverine. It'll bounce. Anything that smashes me I'm just going to get back up, shrug off, and move on. And you recover quicker. You can do the all-nighters and then still function the next day. I think there's a bit of you've got to make the mistakes. I've often thought, if only I'd known then what I know now. And but actually some of the stuff I've cocked up along the way is what puts me in a position to be able to learn the lessons now that I needed to learn to be able to take it on board and use it now. It would be great if I'd been wiser when my beard was a bit darker, but actually the grey hairs help bring the wisdom, I think.
Because there's the saying, isn't there, as well, that is it that like youth is wasted on the young, isn't it? You know, so you know, because you kind of you get to our age, and I agree with you. I feel I'm certainly stronger now than I've ever been. I think I mean, I have lifted heavier weights when I was younger, when I was a lot heavier, and I've probably lifted more weight, but I'm stronger now. I know that sounds a bit strange, but I am feeling that I do notice now I'm getting more not serious injuries, but more niggles and more things that are kind of, you know, so I kind of went from, you know, I was getting a bit of elbow issues, and then that kind of goes, and then you kind of forget, you wake up one day, the elbows are fine now, and then I had a bit of a right shoulder, you know, and then that's kind of gone, and then a couple of weeks back I had a slight pull in my left hamstring, and so it's just there's nothing major, but it's just there always seems to be something now that I'm kind of working around. You
But
know?
with that, right, there's always going to be something, because I used to think this. I used to think it just moved around your body. I was like, oh, that's got better now. It's this. And it's not. They're all there. They're all there. It's just your brain focuses on the one it's worried about the most, doesn't it? So Ben's probably got a few niggles here and there, but it was like, no, bicep. It's all bicep because you've torn it. That's all it's about. And that was something I was going to ask as well, was how long is it taking for you to get back? Because I love this, because I mean, that's a tear, but you get a thing where you might get a nerve impingement or something, and all of a sudden your arm stops working, you can't lift anything above your head, and you're like, I've instantly lost all my strength. It's like, yeah, but it'll all instantly come back as soon as that impingement goes away, because it was there before. I mean, it doesn't come back if you never had it, but so 2 kilos, your brain, as far as it was concerned, and your body was like 2 kilos is 48 or 60 or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. That's what it is at the minute. But it's not as if you've got to work all the way up from 2 kilos, is it? You start out with that, and then once the recovery starts to happen, and then it might accelerate, then all of a sudden you're back up, because you were lifting 24 quite quickly, I think. It seemed to be anyway. It was probably quicker for me watching it on Instagram than it was for you living through it. You know, but so what was, because that all goes with the mental side as well, because you're thinking like, are you thinking this is light, or are you like, I mean, you're a bit different because you think about things differently probably, and you're just, were you just like, this is all I can do at the moment and it's fine? You know what?
I think one of the big steps for me in coming back was trying to be curious about it, to tune into what is this is all data, what's it telling me, rather than going, oh, that's pain, that is actually, it's a signal, and trying to interpret the signal, and trying to figure out what's pain in the, it's a warning shot, it's telling you need to pay attention, which is more mental than physical. What is pain of, actually this is danger, Will Robinson, take a step back, put the weight down, and how much of it is my system trying to tell me to keep me safe, because that's what they're, most of our system is about keeping us safe and using as little energy as possible. So a lot, and that's the purpose of training or habit, creating new habits, is trying to bypass that wiring to go those tram lines we set down for ourselves, to go, this is, yes, it's going to take some initial load, but, and so you need some purpose in there around it, to go, this is not danger, this is an alarm in my system saying, you're using more energy, right? And some of it's predictive as well, so it's your system going, that's probably going to hurt. And so it's like being in a relationship, trying to figure out, are you using the same language? So trying to decode that, in my head, is this pain, or is this discomfort? Is this warning of, it's going to be, you're going to use more energy, and you might, and then there's fear in there as well, as well, what if it happens again? And that's still, as I'm working my way back up the weights, there's a little niggle in there, but it's that tuning into, okay, is this, and calibrating, I guess, what's the scale of this? So it's a warning to go, pay attention, it's a warning to go, danger, or it's a warning, do not go any further, and needing to calibrate that. And that's where a physio, a coach, can be really helpful to help you push through that, because some people will be, I'll ignore the first two, and I'll probably just blunder straight through the sign that says danger minefield, and plow on regardless. And sometimes you need someone to just rein you back a little bit. And others of us, particularly if you've not come across a problem before, whether that's injury or whether it's a setback in life, because you've had that, success, and you've never been there. You've got no frame of reference for that. You've got no reference point, no index card in there to go, oh yeah, that's fine. It's something to fret about. It's not something to fret about, it's something to pay attention to, but different fret, pet. Crack on. You kind of need that that translation. You need a translator with you to help you translate yourself.
That's massive, actually, because if you do something and it's something that you've never experienced before, you're like, how big is the problem? How long is it going to take to sort out? Is it life-threatening? This is what your brain does. Is it life-threatening? And then you're like, is this, do I have to completely change my life and all of that? And most, James, you've got a thumbs down.
I know. I didn't but my hands were like this. I didn't even do anything. So I don't know what happened.
Maybe he's just picking up on my negative language. Who knows?
I didn't have my hands were like this. I didn't even move. I saw that then. Yeah.
But no, it's so that's kind of like one of those things, isn't it? And usually the answer to most of this is you've just got to go through it, and what will be because there's bugger all you can do about it. But that's how, I mean, you were talking about the tram lines I've spoken about before as like the path in the grass. You know, you keep walking it and nothing grows there, and everyone walks that. And unless you walk in a different direction, you just have, it's like you have a stimulus and you have your reaction. And if you have the same reaction to that stimulus every time, it's just going to keep happening until you consciously change it. But that's great. That's the whole point in a coach, isn't it? Or a mentor or whatever you want to call it, is just find someone who's done what you want to do and ask them. And then the journey shortens, doesn't it?
Yeah, and like you said earlier, that it's a question that's important to you. So finding someone that you can feel you're okay to be vulnerable with, to go, look, this might be a really stupid question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Because so many of us go, oh no, it's such a stupid question. I can't ask that. You go, I might think it may not be important to me because I'm not in your shoes, but it's not stupid because it matters to you on some level, right? So then it's worthy of exploration to go, let's give you if a client wants to feel heard, they come to you because you're an expert, but they also want to feel heard in there. And that once you build that relationship in there, that's really quite special too, to give you that vulnerability to go, I'm okay to say I don't know. And especially as adults, it can be quite a nerve-wracking bit to go, but actually, you know what, I don't know, but also doesn't mean that I'm stupid or broken because I don't know. It's because I've never experienced it before. So when you think about it, why would I know the answer to that question? It's not a question I've ever thought about or looked into or researched or had any training on. So yeah, it makes sense that I don't know. But you need someone outside you to go, it's all right. I wouldn't expect you to know. It's not daft. Let's figure it out together.
Do you find
things like that? Things like that always remind me of Calvin and Hobbes when he asked his dad why all films are in black and white, and he just says, "Because the world used to be in black and white, son." And that's it. Color didn't fade in until the late '60s.
And even then, it was kind of, oh, should it? Lots of brands in orange.
I was going to say, Ben, with recovering from injury and coming back from injury, like you said, there's a physical repair and rehabilitation that occurs, and then there's also the mental sort of repair and rehabilitation that needs to occur so that you're not always fearful of that injury happening again. And I know that takes a long time, or can take a long time to kind of put the confidence back in your body. But in the short terms, for example, like I pulled my hamstring deadlifting probably about a month ago, and it's the first time it's ever happened to me. And then obviously in my mind, I'm conscious of that and cautious of that and think it's going to happen again. And I suppose, do you learn, like with your bicep, for example, using a direct kind of real time kind of example and analogy, do you now maybe sort of warm up more differently or do some kind of different process before you start training to, I suppose, to prepare the body for the work that's going to go ahead, but also I suppose to give the brain and the mind confidence that you're doing the right thing, so it's not going to happen again? Do you know what I mean? Have you kind of made some adaptations to the way you actually train?
The only big one I've done in there is usual form of warm up, get the heart up. I've always been fairly dismissive of warm ups myself. When I've been working with others, it's been a key part of getting them in the space. But for myself, broadly, I'll jump straight in. But try to do a couple of reps of each exercise that we're going to do at slowly escalating weights to get through the movement. But ironically, that's exactly what I was doing when the bicep went. So what I have done is put in every session, almost every session. It's one of Squat University, the band loop external rotation medley. So you do at 90 degrees, resisting the band, then up to here, resisting the band, then the Y, and then coming back down through, and make sure I get five or more sequences of that in as part of the warm up. So I'm just getting all my upper body ready for it. But for the most part, it's actually time away from what I'm doing away from the sessions that makes the difference, is making sure that I'm not, even now I'm starting to get better, but I'm not neglecting some of the exercises that got me back to this place. So I'm still doing some grip work, some resisting pronation work in there, some club mobility, just to make sure that I'm still laying the groundwork and keeping those, because I had a chance to rebuild. I'd rather I hadn't, but there's a chance to take something from this. So I started setting down some new foundations for an extension, if you want to call it that. So keep those going, and just add an extra course of bricks on the pad that I've got now, I think. Otherwise, mental. Presumably you've fallen over on the snowboard a fair bit.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Does it occupy your mind when you're boarding?
No, and the second you start thinking about falling over is when you get fall over. It's like you kind of the second you start being worried about, I might catch an edge here or whatever. That's usually when you do, isn't it? Because you almost talk yourself into it, don't you? Yeah.
Yeah. There's a bit of that to just go, actually, you know what? Just relax into it. Be aware. And so some of the time away from what you're doing, so the mindfulness, not in the sitting and thing, but tuning into what's going on, so you can learn to either engage with or disengage from the thoughts, because the thoughts are just data. You don't have to accept them, but let it be, so that you can do what you have to do. Because like you say, the minute your logical brain starts getting in, you're slowing down your ability to function and do what you need to do, and that slows down the actions, which then puts you more risk of falling over or injuring yourself, or little things like if you have to type in your PIN number and you start thinking about it, you suddenly go, it's gone. If I don't think about it, I'll just put it in. It's that kind of stuff. Finding ways to get out of your own way.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because I think that what was I going to say? You sparked something that just made me think there.
But he's trying to think about what it was. So now
I'm trying to think about what it was.
Mind, because you're thinking about it. It's the PIN number.
Yeah, it was around the. That was it. The importance of patience, because I can really see in myself, and I'm sure other people can relate to this, that when you do have some kind of injury or some kind of niggle that you've got, if it's say this tweaked hamstring, I can kind of start to be aware of it, like maybe a set or two before. But then you just kind of think, I'm just going to push it a little bit. I'm just going to push it a little bit, and then it'll bite you properly, And I think it's as we get older, but probably for everybody, it's so difficult, because when you're used to training like hard and regularly, or following a program, or consistently training and feeling good, you're in a rush to kind of try and get back, aren't you? You know what I mean? And I think most people are. And it's just, we've used the quote many times on here, if you listen to the body when it whispers, you won't have to hear it shout. I think it's Gray Cook maybe, or Perry Nicholson, one of the two.
It was somebody who Perry Nicholson nicked it off.
Yeah. But it's kind of that you can hear that whisper coming in, and it actually takes a lot of discipline and strength to stop when you can feel that whisper coming in, because actually the way you get better is by putting more and more sessions together where you're not feeling injured and you're not going into pain, and it's knowing when to stop, isn't it? It's a really, it's tight. It's a tightrope you've got to tread, isn't it?
It's funny because I think about, like, I'll ask Ben this in a second, but the way I think, because you're obviously competing, and you're competing in strongman stuff now, aren't you, James, and what have you? So there's you've got to tread that line very carefully, haven't you? Because for me, I don't compete in anything, right? So I'm doing strength work and all that. But if I feel like doing pistol squats, quite heavy at the minute, right? And there's some days, or there was a couple of days, a couple of weeks ago, where I was just like, I'm trying to do them, but I can feel it's not right. And I'm like, if I do something wrong, I might not be able to join my walking group. And then what happens there? Because I'm trying to build that. And so that came into my mind. So I didn't do the pistol squats, because I'm like, right, why am I doing this getting stronger thing? Well, I'm doing it because it feels good. However, if it stops the rest of my life of all the other stuff that I really enjoy, what happens then? And then that's when depression, anxiety, lack of social thing, all of that. I mean, like, I'm painting a horrible picture, but that's what could happen, right? So that's the way I look at it. And I look at it with a focus of, why am I doing this? And what matters if I miss a session today, or, versus what happens if this niggle that's whispering at me does turn into something worse. So it's not like I'm being super, super, super cautious, you know what I mean? Because you've obviously got to do stuff as well. But it's like, that's kind of in my head a lot of the time of, no, I need to keep walking. So yeah. So Ben, how do you deal with that then? Because, like, obviously you're competing, so
I think for me is reconnecting with going to Hungary and crashing out because of the lingering effects of COVID was a shocker. I think the biggie for me is reconnecting with enjoyment. It's while I'm competing, it is in enjoyment, having some fun and being curious around it are key drivers for me. So I think I put an early post together when I was starting kettlebell sport, was I'm interested to see how good I can be. And so reconnecting to that, to go, this is about how good I can be, not how good I am now. So is this, and it's a bit like the 1 rep max test, very, very few serious, if you're training for something, you don't often go for a 1 rep max. Particularly if your events are multiple reps, you don't need to test your 1 rep max, because functionally, what's the point? And every time you're, to quote Paul on the show, every time you test the 1 rep max, that's a training session you're missing that's building towards the 1 rep max. So what is this building towards? And if I want to see how good I can be over the long term, to figure out how much potential I have or don't have, which I'll never be able to judge until I'm actually done. So I want to be in this for the long haul, so I can have a decent time set to judge my potential, and whether I lived up to that. Where does this fit in that plan? And being curious about it, and having some fun with it, because once you start thinking the session is the thing, that you it's a bit sexist, but we had an expression when I was playing rugby, trains like Tarzan, plays like Jane. That if you're full bore every training session, but you don't show up when it's actually on the line, you're missing a trick. So it's that, how do I walk that tightrope between doing what I need to do to be able to perform when I need to, and there's the whys come into that. For you, the walking is more important than the lifting. So the lifting is important because it keeps your ankles strong enough to be able to deal with all the stuff when you're walking. But maybe I'll back off the weight for this session. We'll talk to Paul and back it off, or I'll drop out the pistols altogether today because it's too dicey against what my priority is. So tuning into what my priority and focus is, that organizing principle about what I'm here to do. Again, but yeah, curiosity and fun are key to me. Is remember, I'm supposed to be having some fun with this. I'm a middle-aged fat bloke, so this is supposed to be about having some fun with myself and seeing what I can do. Don't beat myself up. Just go see if you can do it. If you can't, well, you'll know you can do something different next time. If you then choose to debrief on the session and go, what did I plan to do? How did that go against what I planned, not against what I now feel, but crucially going back to what I actually set out to do, and assess it against that rather than some new criteria I put in along the way. And then I can improve it for the next one.
It's really interesting because when we spoke to Lucy last week, She even said, didn't she, that when she was trying to train 4 or 5 times a week, along with full-time shift work, everything else, it was actually stressing her out that she couldn't maybe do all the sessions as well as she wanted to, and she couldn't fit them in, and she wasn't enjoying it as much. And she said that now that it's 3 times a week, and the same thing with the food and the diet, wasn't it, Pete? She was saying, well, I was meant to be trying to eat this many times a day, and on this, and with work, she just couldn't do it. So it was creating sort of a stress, and it was actually taking away the enjoyment. And as she said, as we said earlier, she said it's kind of a hobby that's got out of control. But and she said to her coach, or a coach said to her, I think I've worked it out. When you're actually happy and you're enjoying life and you're enjoying your training, you're a far better athlete, you know, rather than when you're stressed and you're worried and you're struggling to fit sessions in. So even at her level, it's just about getting that priority and getting the balance, I suppose. I mean, we talk about it, you know, balance, and is there such a thing as balance and all the rest of it, but it's not stressing yourself out through. And especially for people, when we are just exercising effectively and training for fun, it's a hobby, it's not a profession for us, you know. Do you really want to be stressed and worried and anxious about your training, or do you want to be enjoying it? And hopefully you want to be enjoying it, and you'll do it for longer, and it'll be better for you in the long run, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, I think even at the elite level, if you keep ramping stress up, including being really overly rigid with your rules about when I train, when I eat, all of that is just stress in your bucket. That when we're under stress, when we're under real pressure, our ability to make decisions that are consistent with our values is impaired. To show the best of ourselves is impaired. So even at a pro level, trying to minimize the stress along the way, and that that's kind of the point of pro sport, is so you can strip out some of the unnecessary stressors, so that you're only stressed by what's necessary for what you're trying to do. Because it does make a difference in performance terms, real difference in performance terms.
I will caveat what James said about enjoyment with you have to tweak with what your interpretation of enjoyment is, because pistols aren't enjoyable. Squats aren't enjoyable. Ever.
I don't know about that.
For me, pressing's enjoyable, but squats aren't. But like, that's the thing. But it doesn't mean you don't do them. It just means, but it's the enjoyment of everything that comes from it, doesn't it? Because that was like Paul talking about training in your comfort zone. He goes, yeah, but when you're doing squats, if you're training squats, you have to change your level of you have to change your interpretation of what comfort means, because they're never comfortable.
Yeah, I think it's how you define enjoyment, isn't it? It's the enjoyment of that immediate sensation in the moment of it all being giggles and smiles, and the enjoyment of the satisfaction of doing a good job, hitting the session, seeing your progress across there. There's enjoyment in that, but it's a different. It's not that immediate emotion. There's a deeper connection with that. A bit like happiness, you got that immediate. It makes me smile, but actually my overall sense of happiness isn't that great. And sense of enjoyment versus the emotion of enjoyment, I think, are two slightly different constructs.
Yes, I suppose, you've got enjoyment, you've got fun, you've got, these kind of words, happiness, which, you like you say, we can go into, you've got the kind of the minutiae of in a moment, what makes you happy, or what's enjoyable and what's fun, and then magnify it, or zoomed out to, the things that you do that are maybe not that enjoyable in the moment, but they create a more satisfying, fulfilling, enjoyable life. So
it was funny. I was waiting for the people yesterday for the walk. So I'd walked up there with Sid. He was tied up on a bench. I was just sitting on a bench waiting for everyone to turn up. And it was at one of the park and rides. And there was a lady walking past with her daughter, like a young daughter in a pushchair. And her daughter was screaming, like that. The world was ending. Something had obviously happened that was like, that was our world done. And then she went, "Oh, look, a doggy." And then she started smiling. And there was Sid. So I said to the mum, and I was like, whatever it was that was destroying, like, that the world was ending, because just forgotten all about it, hasn't she? And she was like, yeah. So it's one of those things of saying, like, oh, is she sad and depressed? I mean, she was about 3 or something. if that. Are you sad and depressed? No, she's not. She's just unhappy in that moment. But as soon as she sees the dog, she forgets all about it. It's like, and it just says it all to me when I watch kids like that, and you think like, oh, you're unhappy. It's like, what kids are actually truly unhappy at that age,
Yeah.
It's switching focus, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Focus. Yeah.
Going back to the Simon Marion episode, the pattern interrupt. As adults, we're less given to interrupting our pattern, but finding a way of breaking that spiral of whatever it is to make sure we're on the right path.
Yeah.
Wow, this has been really interesting. We haven't mentioned burpees once.
Yeah, burpees.
We've been going for like
we have now
for nearly an hour. Yeah. So what are you doing? We'll quickly do it before we wrap up. I mean, what's this? What is the burpee challenge that you're on at the moment, and how far are you through it as we record?
As we record, we're 18 days in. It's a now annual event I've been doing for I think about 12 years. I did one. So it's 100 days. You start off with day one with a single burpee, day two, and you build up to 100 burpees on day 100. And the real, it doesn't have to be burpees. You can do it with whatever you like. The main bit in there was challenging the discipline of going day in, day out, and just go, oh, bloody hell, it's burpees. And what's really interesting over time is fairly consistently, about 2/3 of the way through is where people are most vulnerable to dropping out if they make it that far. There's initial excitement. Everyone wants to do 100 burpees on day one. You go, pace yourself. It's a long way to go. And about 2/3 of the way, and you're far enough away from the excitement in the beginning, and the end still feels like a long way off. So people stop doing it. It's now a habit for me because it's an annual event. After a couple of years of doing it, I did a burpee year, where I escalated it one a day every day for the full year. Although I then started looking at the numbers and started rounding it up. So I spent the last couple of weeks doing about 500 a day to finish on 71,500 for the year. And I won't be doing that again in a hurry. I've done it as a sit-up year where I did increasing numbers of sit-ups every day for a year, and that was just boring, really, really boring. There was no excitement. It was just but it's finding something to do day in, day out. Can you give yourself a small action, challenge yourself to build a habit, and stick with it.
I suppose it could be, like you say, it could be a kettlebell swing, it could be a press up, could be bodyweight squats, could be, what's that, Pete?
One pint, then two, then three. It'd be like Vic and Bob. Have you ever seen that? It was like 94 or something for the it was for Comic Relief, where they're trying to drink 75 pints in one song. It's hilarious.
Oh God.
Look it up on YouTube. It's so funny.
So are you doing them as like, is it one set? Is it an unbroken set, or can you split it up? Are you splitting it up throughout the day? So when you get up to say 50 burpees, would you do 5 sets of 10, or would you still just do one set of 50? I mean, how do you do?
Very much doubt I'll do one set of 50, James. Yeah, probably 5 sets of 10 at that point. It will sort of depend how I'm feeling, how I felt from the day before. This year I didn't make a big thing of it because I wasn't sure how far I get with my arms, so I just wanted to start it and see how far I got. But yeah, at the moment it's one set unbroken. We'll start to mix it up. I might start throwing in some, as I get more comfortable, as I've done in previous years, throwing some different variations of the burpee, and it might be I do some random sets. In different locations. So I've done them outside the Royal Albert Hall. I've done them on Carnaby Street. I
remember that last year.
That was quite good fun.
Stick a backflip in as well.
So yeah, mix it up a bit, and that's kind of, it's a choose your own adventure for people as well. If you scale it to, if you don't want to do the full chest to floor with a jump, you could do it as just a get down on the floor and get back up to your feet anyhow, for reps, or scale it into press ups and squats. But the point is the daily discipline of it. And so where I have organised it and have had people doing it with me as well, one of the rules is if you miss 2 days, you're done. And 2 reasons for that. One is you're missing the point, because the challenge is the daily discipline, but also once you start catching up, especially as you're further down the ladder, you're asking for injury.
It's easier to keep up than catch up. Do you know how many burpees it is in total?
5,050.
Yep. Yeah, I was looking at it. So it's an average of 50 a day, isn't it?
You banged out the Gaussian equation?
No, well, I know it anyway, because it was like because you often do like 1 to 10 ladders and stuff like that, which is 55, isn't it? So
55.
it's just yeah, yeah. So
But yeah, there'll be thunderstruck burpees on day 39, which is every time they say thunder in the song, you do a burpee,
and that's
which
39 of them.
which nicely shakes it up.
I've heard that with a shot before, never with a. In fact, no, did someone do it with kettlebell presses?
I was going to say I saw like recently, like an American football team, like a college team in the States, did thunderstruck, but did it with like a bicep curl. So the whole team were all standing in the gym, and like you say, every time they say thunder, they got to do this curl, and then the whole team has stood there doing bicep curls. So that's 39 times, is it, in the song?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
You could also do it because in Frasier there's a bit where they realize they like watching the same program as their dad, and you know how they're totally different, but it's the Antiques Roadshow because they like watching it for the antiques, and he likes watching it because he gets to find out how much stuff is, and he thinks it's a game show. So they take it. He takes a drink of Ballantine, and they take a drink of wine every time they mention veneer. You could do that with pull-ups or burpees or sit-ups or anything, couldn't you? You could do, you know these drinking games that they have where they do that. You could do it with any exercise, and everybody would get fitter. What a great! There you go. There's an idea for everybody when you're watching telly.
So cut through the rest of this and just get to that one.
Yeah, well, in fact, the rest of the podcast. Yeah, we'll just put that one little clip up. That solves it. Once a week, that solves it for everybody.
So, Ben, if people want to, I mentioned it at the start, but if people want to kind of follow you, want to see what you're up to, want to, hear about these challenges that you're doing, and see your kind of continued sort of rehabilitation into getting back into the kettlebell sport and things, what is the best platform for people to do? I mean, is it Instagram? Is that where you're mostly at?
Yeah, Instagram's probably the easiest, James. I love hearing from people. I really love seeing people do their own thing and achieving stuff and achieving things they didn't think they can do. And so when someone says, if there's anything I can do, someone drops us a message and says, what about, I'll do what I can on that to help. And it's really nice to see people just getting outside the comfort zone and doing more than they thought was possible before. So yeah, connect with us on Insta at Yay Burpees, or we'll see where we go from there.
Yeah, excellent. So that's at Yay Burpees. That's YAYBURPEES, and that's all without no underscores, anything like that, at Yay Burpees. No, that's fantastic. That's so good to catch up with you. And to so you're on day, as we record, you're on day 18.
Yeah.
But by the time this comes out on the 9th of August, that's going to be another kind of 12, 13, another maybe 25-ish days, probably.
40-ish, give or take, something like that.
Yeah. So you're going to be getting into it there. But 100 days, that's obviously, it's over 3 months, isn't it? Of every day. So that's fantastic. And do you start on a certain day, or a certain date, or did you start on a particular date when you do it, or?
It's moved around over the years. I started 1st of July this year, partly because I'm hoping that my recovery goes well enough I can qualify for the England team to go to Belgium in November. And I want a good month out of the way between finishing the ladder and going to the comp. I've done it before, where I did a strongman comp down in Westbury, and I was sneaking off during the breaks to do a set of burpees before getting some more food before going and doing another, and then having to do the bulk of them after the competition was just brutal. But so yeah, trying to learn a bit as I get older,
Yeah. Oh, it's fantastic, because I can imagine that it's a great conditioning tool as well. And like I say, it's a mental practice and a mental discipline to do it every day. But obviously, as those burpees start to crank up the numbers, then it's going to be very physically challenging as well. So, and like I say, it's the doing it day in, day out, like the cycling, like how we opened the podcast. We're talking about you sort of cycling 12 and a half miles each way. You think, well, yeah, doing it once is fine. Doing it on a Sunday where just to test out the route. But then when you're doing it, and then you've got a day of work, and then you're doing it on the way back, and then you've got to wake up the next morning and do it again. It's that kind of accumulative effect, isn't it? This is
the problem with something like the burpee challenge is, though, people get to day 50 and think they're halfway through, and it's like you're nowhere near. You're
Yeah,
nowhere near. That's
there's
probably like
always
what, about
some maths nerd in the group who goes, "Oh no, you're only a third of the way through at this point." You go, oh,
yeah,
what?
that's like about 1,500 or something, isn't it? It's like, no. You're not even a third of the way. You've got loads more left. Those last 10 days are going to be like most of it.
Yeah, but the last 10 days are actually in a weird kind of way easy because you're so close to the finish line that nothing's going to stop you barring injury, but little is going to get in the way of you finishing it at that stage. That bit before is the tougher bit. I'm not a fascist about it. It doesn't have to be burpees. You know, if it's take 5 minutes a day and read a book for 5 minutes, or have a go on a Rubik's Cube for 5 minutes a day, then put it down. But do that every day for 100 days and see how far you travel.
5 minutes a day on Rubik's Cubes is for amateurs. I do way more than that.
How easy is that? You go, oh, it's too small. It's too small. It's for amateurs. You know, it's hardly going to touch the sides. You go, but 100 days with 5 minutes is 500 minutes of time on the cube. Which is
like anything, and it's like practicing guitar or practicing an instrument or whatever it is. You know, going out for a walk. You know, and if you added a minute a day, if you started with 1 minute walk and then you added, so you end up with 100 minutes. What's that? An hour and 40 minutes of walking by the end. That would be huge. That could be hugely beneficial to someone, you know, who doesn't do many steps at the moment. Yeah, no, it's great. I love it. It's a great format and a great it's a great call to action and a great idea for people to run with any way they wish. I think that's great. Fantastic. Right, we will wrap up there, Ben, but that's been really, really good to catch up with you, and a really interesting conversation. And I think, like you say, dealing with setbacks is something that every single one of us is going to deal with at some stage in our training life. And even like we said as well, you know, these people that we maybe almost hold up on a pedestal or put on a pedestal that seem like they're hugely inspiring, you know, Olympians or world champions or whatever, they all do it as well, but we don't ever really think of them like that, because like you say, we maybe put them on a pedestal and we don't get to hear the challenges they go through, but it's something that's just part of the human condition. Anything, Pete, as we wrap up?
No.
It's been good. You start and we'll go on for another half an hour. Yeah,
it always happens. You said something about burpees about a quarter of an hour ago, and we've just had a massive conversation.
Yeah. No, we're there, but it's great. No, brilliant. Ben, thanks so much for joining us again. It's really, really lovely. And hopefully maybe when we do this, you know, unique results tour to Bath, walking with Walk Bath, maybe we get to meet you in person at that. Fantastic.
Love to. That'd be amazing. Pete's got some lovely routes set out for you already. So it'd be great to see you guys there and sharing the countryside with you.
Yeah, that'd be brilliant, especially if it's only sort of like 12 miles away or something like that.
Yeah.
That would be great. And we've already got the dates. I did say last week, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's next June. We're going to be doing that, which will be fantastic. Brilliant. So thank you everybody for listening. Thank you for sticking with us, and thank you for your continuing listenership and what viewership, if you're watching on YouTube, if that's a word. That has been episode 206. We're going to be back next week with episode 207 with Keith Moole, who is extreme endurance canoer, kayaker, and other things. But we're going to be talking with him next week on episode 207. Please do share, like, subscribe, leave a review if you're watching or listening on a platform that allows you to do so, especially if you can do that for us on Apple Podcasts. That would be great. And then we will read out the review online and get some merch sent out for you. But we will see you next week for episode 207. Until then, bye-bye.